Before you even think about skipping this, listen to me carefully, because what I'm about to tell you in the next few seconds can flip a woman's entire perception of you. Most men will never hear this truth. Most men will go their entire lives speaking to women in a way that quietly kills attraction without even realizing it. They will repeat the same predictable compliments, the same shallow observations, the same rehearsed lines, and they will walk away confused when the spark never truly ignites. But you're here, and that already tells me something about you. I'm Mary Smith, host of the Mindful Senior Living YouTube channel, and today we're going to talk about something far more powerful than charm, far more powerful than looks, and far more powerful than confidence alone. We're going to talk about the psychology of the words you choose when you speak to a woman. Now, before we go any deeper, I want you to pause for just a moment and think about the last meaningful conversation you had with a woman. Not a quick exchange, not small talk, a real conversation where you felt a genuine connection forming. Do you remember the moment where something shifted emotionally between you? Maybe it was a sentence she said. Maybe it was the way she looked at you when you noticed something about her that others had missed. Those moments matter far more than most men realize. And if you find conversations like this interesting, if you're someone who genuinely wants to understand women on a deeper emotional level, go ahead and take a second to like this video and subscribe. It helps this channel reach people who are ready for these conversations. And I'm always curious about the community here, so tell me something simple in the comments. Where are you watching from today? Now let's talk about a truth that may surprise you. Women fantasize far less about men who try hard, and far more about men who understand psychological curiosity. Most men believe attraction is created by effort. They believe if they compliment enough, if they try enough, if they show enough interest, eventually something will happen. But attraction rarely grows from effort alone. It grows from emotional stimulation, and emotional stimulation often begins with something incredibly simple: language. The words a man chooses can quietly shape the emotional experience a woman has when she speaks with him. Words can make her feel ordinary, or they can make her feel deeply understood. Words can pass through her mind like background noise, or they can echo there long after the conversation ends. And here's the mistake most men make. They compliment women in ways that are completely predictable. You look beautiful. Nice hair. You have pretty eyes. Now let me be clear. There is nothing wrong with these compliments. They are polite, kind, even pleasant. But emotionally, they evaporate almost instantly. Why? Because every man says them. When a compliment is common, it carries almost no emotional weight. It's like hearing the same song played on repeat in a crowded room. Eventually, it becomes background noise. But something fascinating happens when a compliment becomes specific, unexpected, and emotionally perceptive. A woman's brain doesn't just hear it, it begins to process it. She pauses. Her attention sharpens. And suddenly, something small becomes memorable. Many men underestimate how deeply women process language. Research in emotional psychology consistently shows that women often engage more neural activity in areas of the brain related to emotional interpretation during conversations. In simple terms, women tend to analyze not just what was said, but what it meant, why it was said, and what it reveals about the person speaking. So when a man notices something subtle, something meaningful, something personal, a woman's mind doesn't just move on, it lingers. And that lingering is where attraction begins to grow. The world often tells men that women are complicated, but the truth is something quite different. Women are emotionally attentive in ways most men were simply never taught to recognize. Once you understand that, communication changes completely. When you learn to compliment a woman in the language of emotional recognition rather than surface-level observation, something powerful begins to happen. She doesn't just feel admired, she feels seen. And being seen is one of the most powerful emotional experiences a human being can have. Now here's where things become truly interesting. There are 3 specific compliments that activate this emotional response in a way most men never discover. These aren't cheesy lines, they aren't manipulation tactics, and they certainly aren't something you deliver like a rehearsed performance. They're simple observations expressed with sincerity. but they touch parts of a woman's identity she protects carefully. And when that happens, something subtle shifts inside her mind. She begins to think about you differently. She begins to replay the moment. Sometimes she even finds herself wondering about you later, when you're not even there. Before we talk about the first compliment, we need to understand why it works, because if you repeat words without understanding their emotional foundation, they lose their impact almost immediately. Women do not respond to phrases. They respond to feelings. More specifically, they respond to the emotional atmosphere a man creates around his words. Imagine two different men saying the exact same sentence. One says it casually while checking his phone, distracted, almost mechanical. The other says it slowly, calmly, with genuine attention in his voice. Same words, completely different emotional effect. The reason is simple. Presence amplifies meaning. When a man is fully present in a conversation, when he is paying attention, noticing details, listening carefully, his words carry a different kind of energy. And women feel that difference immediately. This brings us to the first compliment. It's surprisingly simple. I love the way your mind works. Now, at first glance, that sentence may not sound dramatic. It's not flashy. It's not poetic. It's not something you'd see printed on a greeting card. But psychologically, it touches something very powerful. Because you're not complimenting her appearance. You're not praising something temporary or external. You're acknowledging her thinking, her perspective, her inner world. Most women spend their entire lives receiving compliments about how they look. And while those compliments can be nice, they often feel interchangeable. Replace the person giving them and the compliment stays the same. But when a man notices how a woman thinks, something much deeper happens. You're acknowledging the part of her identity she built over years of experience. The part of her that reflects her curiosity, her ideas, her creativity, her intuition, the way she interprets the world. And here's the subtle difference that makes this compliment powerful. Most men say something like, "You're smart." That sounds positive, but it's vague. It feels like a label. But when you say, "I love the way your mind works," you're describing a dynamic experience. You're saying there's something about the way she processes ideas that fascinates you. That creates curiosity, and curiosity is incredibly stimulating emotionally. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you're having a conversation with a woman about travel. She begins explaining why she prefers small, quiet towns instead of famous tourist cities. She describes how she enjoys observing daily life, watching local routines, noticing the rhythm of a place rather than the attractions. Most men would simply nod and move on, but a man who understands emotional communication might pause and say something like, "You know, I really like the way your mind works, the way you notice those little details most people overlook." That moment changes everything, because now she doesn't just feel heard, she feels understood. And when someone feels understood, something beautiful happens psychologically. They open up more, they relax, they begin sharing deeper thoughts. This is one of the most powerful secrets about human connection. People become emotionally drawn to those who recognize the layers of their personality others ignore. When you compliment the way a woman thinks, you're giving her something rare, recognition of her inner world. And that kind of recognition can linger in her mind for hours, sometimes days. She might later find herself remembering the conversation, wondering what exactly you noticed, replaying the moment in her head. And without realizing it, she begins associating that warm emotional experience with you. That is the quiet beginning of emotional imprinting. Not manipulation, not strategy, simply the natural psychological effect of meaningful communication. And here's something many men overlook. Women often fantasize about men who make them feel mentally understood. Not just admired, not just desired, understood. Because understanding creates emotional safety. And emotional safety allows attraction to grow naturally. Now imagine combining that kind of recognition with genuine curiosity. Instead of ending the moment there, you might gently ask, "What made you start noticing those little details about places?" Now you're inviting her deeper into the conversation. You're giving her space to explore her own thoughts. And when someone explores their thoughts with you, they begin to feel closer to you. That's how connection builds. Slowly, naturally, organically. This is also a wonderful moment to practice something I often recommend to viewers of this channel, a simple exercise in mindful listening. The next time you're speaking with a woman, try listening not just to the facts she's sharing, but to the patterns of her thinking. Ask yourself quietly, what does she care about? What fascinates her? What emotional themes appear in the way she tells stories? When you begin noticing these patterns, compliments like, "I love the way your mind works," stop feeling like a line. They become honest observations, and authenticity is what gives words their power. If you're finding yourself nodding along to this, take a moment right now and let me know in the comments. I'm always curious how many people here have experienced a moment where someone truly noticed something deeper about them. Those moments stay with us. We remember them years later sometimes because they remind us that someone saw more than the surface. And when a woman feels that from a man, she begins to experience him differently from the countless others who only noticed the obvious. She begins to feel curiosity about him too. And curiosity is the doorway to attraction. Something fascinating begins to happen once a woman experiences that first layer of recognition. The moment she feels that a man has noticed the way her mind works, her emotional guard shifts slightly. Not dramatically, not all at once, but just enough for curiosity to step in where indifference used to be. And curiosity is a powerful force in human psychology. Think about the last time someone said something about you that caught you off guard in a meaningful way. Something specific, something perceptive, something that made you pause and think, how did they notice that about me? That moment creates a ripple in the mind. You replay it later, you analyze it, you feel it again. Women experience this ripple very strongly when emotional recognition is involved. Their brains begin building an internal narrative around the interaction. They start filling in emotional details, remembering the tone of voice, the eye contact, the timing of the moment. And the interesting part is this: the more emotionally meaningful the observation felt, the more her mind returns to it. This is why surface-level compliments disappear so quickly. They contain no mystery, no discovery, no emotional substance to explore later. But when a man says something that reveals real attention, her mind begins a quiet investigation. What made him say that? What exactly did he notice? What does that say about the way he sees people? And without realizing it, she begins thinking about him again, not because he tried to impress her, but because he stimulated her curiosity. Now, once that curiosity exists, something else becomes possible. A deeper layer of emotional recognition that touches a woman's sense of presence in the world. This is where the second compliment enters the picture, and it's one that most men never think to say. The compliment is simple. There's something about your energy that stays with me. Now, listen carefully, because this one touches a part of human psychology that many people never fully understand. Every person carries an internal question they rarely speak out loud. For women, that question often sounds like this: do I actually leave an impression on people, or do I just pass through their lives unnoticed? Even confident women quietly wonder about this. They wonder if they are memorable, if their presence matters, if the way they express themselves leaves an emotional mark. So when a man calmly says that something about her energy stays with him, something very subtle happens inside her mind. You are telling her that she created an emotional imprint, not intentionally, not by trying, but naturally. And that distinction matters more than most men realize. Because when a compliment focuses on something natural and unconscious, it feels authentic. It doesn't feel like flattery. It feels like discovery. You're not telling her she tried to impress you successfully. You're telling her she affected you simply by being herself. That kind of recognition carries emotional gravity. Let me give you an example of how this can appear in real life. Imagine you've had a relaxed conversation with a woman at a small gathering. Maybe you spoke about books, travel, life experiences, nothing overly dramatic, just a genuine exchange of ideas. Later, as the conversation winds down, you say something calmly like this: "You know, there's something about your energy that's really interesting." It kind of stays with you after the conversation. Then you leave it there. No explanation, no elaboration, just a quiet observation. Now here's what happens psychologically. Her mind immediately begins searching for meaning. Energy, what exactly did he notice? Her imagination becomes engaged, and imagination is the most powerful emotional amplifier that exists. When people imagine how others perceive them, they start creating emotional narratives in their mind, and once your presence is part of that narrative, you become more memorable than you ever intended. Attraction is not always created by what happens during the interaction. Often, it's created by what the mind does afterward, the replay, the reflection. Women are especially prone to this kind of reflective processing because emotional memory tends to be very vivid for them. They don't just remember what happened, they remember how it felt. So when a man leaves behind a compliment that feels meaningful but slightly mysterious, her mind continues engaging with it long after he's gone. She might even smile without realizing it. Because the mind enjoys revisiting moments that feel emotionally warm and slightly unresolved. That unresolved feeling is important. If you over-explain the compliment, you close the loop too quickly. But when you allow a small element of mystery, the loop stays open, and the mind naturally returns to open loops. This only works when the observation is delivered with calm sincerity. If it sounds exaggerated, rehearsed, or overly dramatic, the effect disappears. Women have strong intuition when it comes to emotional authenticity. They can sense when someone is speaking from genuine perception versus when someone is trying to create a reaction. That's why tone matters so much. Your voice should feel relaxed, almost reflective, like you're simply sharing a thought that crossed your mind. And then you move on naturally. No pressure, no expectation, just presence. This is where many men make a mistake. They treat compliments like transactions. They give a compliment and immediately look for a reaction. Did she smile? Did she blush? Did she respond enthusiastically? But emotional influence doesn't work like that. Real emotional impact often happens quietly and privately. Sometimes a woman will respond with nothing more than a thoughtful look or a small smile. But inside her mind, a conversation has already begun. She is processing the meaning, and that internal processing is far more powerful than an immediate reaction. Have you ever met someone who seemed ordinary at first, but later you found yourself thinking about them more than expected? Maybe it was the way they spoke. Maybe it was something insightful they said. Maybe it was the calm confidence in their presence. Those are the people who leave emotional impressions. And once someone leaves an impression, they become harder to forget. This is exactly what the second compliment taps into. It signals that her presence affected you in a way that wasn't superficial. It tells her she created a moment worth remembering. And when someone feels remembered, they begin to value the connection differently. If you're enjoying this deeper look at human psychology, take a second to tap the like button. It helps this kind of thoughtful content reach more people who are genuinely interested in understanding connection rather than chasing shallow advice. Now let's explore something even deeper. Once a woman begins to feel mentally recognized and emotionally memorable, a third layer of attraction becomes possible. This layer touches something very close to the human heart. Not excitement, not curiosity, something quieter, something more grounding, peace. Human beings spend much of their lives searching for environments where they feel emotionally safe, not bored, not numb, but calm. And calm has become increasingly rare in modern life. Everyone is busy, everyone is distracted, everyone is performing versions of themselves for social media, work, and social circles. So when a person encounters someone whose presence creates calm, the emotional effect can be surprisingly powerful. This brings us to the third compliment, and in many ways, it is the deepest one of all. The compliment is this: I feel calmer when I talk to you. At first glance, this might sound almost too simple, but emotionally, it speaks to something profound. When you tell a woman that her presence brings you calm, you are acknowledging something deeper than attraction. You are recognizing emotional influence. You are telling her that being around her affects your internal state. Many women secretly hope that their presence brings comfort to the people they care about, not because they want to rescue anyone or solve their problems, but because emotional connection often grows through shared peace. When someone feels calm around another person, their nervous system relaxes, their guard lowers, Their mind becomes more open. In psychology, we sometimes describe this as co-regulation, where two people influence each other's emotional state simply through presence and interaction. When a man expresses that a woman's presence has this calming effect on him, it signals emotional trust, and trust is one of the strongest foundations of attraction. The way you say it matters enormously. This compliment should never sound dramatic or heavy. It should sound like a quiet realization, something you noticed in the moment. For example, imagine you're sitting together having a conversation. Maybe the environment is relaxed. Maybe you're talking about life, family, experiences. At some point, you pause and say calmly, "You know what's interesting? I actually feel really calm talking to you." That's it. No explanation necessary. No emotional speeches. Just a simple observation. And again, the mind begins processing. She may wonder, why does he feel calm around me? What did I do differently? What is it about our conversation that created that feeling? And the more she reflects on those questions, the more emotionally meaningful the interaction becomes. Because calm is deeply attractive. Not the dull kind of calm that feels lifeless, but the grounded calm that feels safe and steady. When people feel that kind of calm around someone, they begin imagining what it would be like to experience more time with that person. More conversations, more moments, more closeness. That imagination is where emotional attraction quietly expands. When you tell a woman that you feel calm when you talk to her, something subtle but powerful happens inside her emotional world. She begins to understand that her presence affects you in a way that goes far beyond appearance or surface-level attraction. And that realization touches something very deep inside most women. You see, a woman may enjoy hearing that she looks beautiful. She may appreciate hearing that she's interesting or charming. But when a man expresses that she brings him a sense of calm, he is acknowledging something far more meaningful. He is acknowledging emotional influence. And emotional influence is incredibly powerful in human relationships. Many women move through life wondering if the way they exist in the world actually matters to the people around them. So, when a man calmly tells her that speaking with her brings him peace, it signals something rare. It tells her that her presence has value, not because she tried to impress you, but simply because of who she is when she shows up authentically. Now imagine how different that feels compared to the kind of compliments she hears most often. "You're gorgeous." "You're hot." "You look amazing tonight." Again, there is nothing inherently wrong with those words, but they exist on the surface of experience. The compliment about calm recognizes what someone can feel, and emotional experiences are remembered much longer than visual impressions. This is why people often remember the feeling of a conversation years later, even if they barely remember the exact words spoken. The emotional tone becomes the memory. When a woman begins associating your presence with calm, something interesting happens psychologically. Her brain begins linking you with emotional safety. In neuroscience, when people feel safe and relaxed in conversation, the brain releases oxytocin, a hormone associated with trust and bonding. This chemical response subtly encourages the mind to see the other person as emotionally significant. Now, here is something that many men misunderstand. When you share a compliment like this, you are not lowering your status. You are not appearing weak. In fact, the opposite is true when the words are delivered with grounded confidence. A man who can calmly acknowledge his emotional experience without sounding desperate or dramatic demonstrates emotional maturity. And emotional maturity is deeply attractive. He feels balanced, and balance is magnetic. Now, I want to share a small story that illustrates this beautifully. A viewer once wrote to this channel describing a moment he had during a long train ride. He found himself sitting next to a woman he had never met before. They began talking casually about travel, books, and life experiences. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. Near the end of the ride, he told her something simple. He said, "You know, this has been one of the most relaxing conversations I've had in a long time." She paused, smiled softly, and said, "I was thinking the same thing." A few days later, she sent him a message saying that conversation had stayed in her mind all week. That is the emotional power of calm connection. No flashy lines, just presence. Now let's pause and reflect. These three compliments work because they acknowledge three meaningful layers. The first recognizes her mind. The second recognizes her presence. And the third recognizes her emotional impact. When someone feels seen in these three areas, they feel understood, memorable, and emotionally meaningful. And those three feelings together create the foundation for genuine attraction. But here is the most important truth. None of this works if the words are empty. You cannot memorize these sentences and deliver them like lines in a script. Human beings are incredibly sensitive to emotional authenticity. This is why the real skill here is not memorizing compliments. The real skill is paying attention. Attention is one of the most valuable gifts you can offer another person. In a world where everyone is distracted, genuine attention feels rare. When you truly listen, you notice how their eyes light up when they talk about something meaningful. You notice how their tone changes. These details reveal the emotional landscape of a person. This is something psychologists call emotional mirroring. When a person feels that their internal experience has been recognized and reflected accurately, it creates a sense of closeness. Not forced closeness, natural closeness. So instead of focusing on trying to impress women, shift your attention toward understanding them. Be curious. Ask thoughtful questions. Listen carefully to the answers. Allow conversations to unfold instead of rushing them. Now here's a small exercise for the next time you have a conversation. Ask yourself 3 quiet questions. What does this person think deeply about? What kind of emotional presence do they bring? And how does their presence make me feel internally? If you can answer those 3 questions honestly, you will already know how to express a meaningful compliment without forcing anything. Try it and see how the connection deepens. And when compliments come from genuine awareness, they feel very different to the person receiving them. They feel earned, they feel personal, they feel real. Now I want to talk briefly about something many men struggle with, and that is timing. Even the most thoughtful compliment can lose its impact if delivered at the wrong moment. Meaningful observations work best when the conversation already has a relaxed rhythm, when both people feel comfortable speaking and listening. If a conversation has just started, jumping immediately into deep emotional compliments can feel overwhelming. But when the conversation has flowed for a while and mutual comfort exists, a simple reflective observation can feel perfectly natural. So patience matters. Allow connection to unfold. Let curiosity guide the conversation rather than urgency. Attraction rarely grows from rushing. It grows from presence, and presence cannot be faked. It comes from slowing down enough to truly experience the moment you're sharing with another person. Now, before we move forward, if you've ever experienced a conversation where someone noticed something about you that felt deeply personal, I'd love to hear about it. Moments like that often stay with us for years. You can share your experience in the comments. Conversations like these help people realize that meaningful connection is something many of us quietly value. And if you're enjoying this deeper look at communication and psychology, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future discussions. This channel exists for people who want to approach relationships with awareness, emotional intelligence, and authenticity. Because the truth is, the way we speak to each other shapes the quality of every relationship we build. And when we learn to communicate with awareness, the results can be quietly transformative. Now let's explore something even deeper about why these kinds of compliments can linger in a woman's mind long after the conversation ends. Because there is a fascinating psychological process happening beneath the surface when someone feels emotionally recognized. And once you understand it, you will begin to see human connection in an entirely new way. When someone feels emotionally recognized, the mind does something very interesting. It begins attaching meaning to the person who created that experience. Psychologists often refer to this as emotional association. When a moment produces a warm, meaningful emotional response, the brain quietly links that feeling with the individual who was present during the experience. This is why certain people become memorable, even if you haven't known them for very long. It isn't always about how much time you spent together. Sometimes it's about the emotional quality of the interaction. A single conversation where someone felt deeply understood can leave a stronger impression than months of casual interaction with someone else. And this is where many men misunderstand attraction. They assume attraction grows primarily from external traits like appearance, status, or charm. While those things can play a role, emotional memory often has a much stronger influence on how people remember each other. When a woman leaves a conversation feeling seen, mentally stimulated, and emotionally calm, her brain stores that interaction as something meaningful. Later, when she thinks back on the people she has met recently, the ones who created the strongest emotional impressions rise to the surface of her mind first. That's why sometimes someone you spoke with briefly can linger in your thoughts longer than someone you spent an entire evening with. The emotional imprint was simply stronger. Now here's something important to understand. None of this requires manipulation. In fact, manipulation usually has the opposite effect. When people sense that someone is trying to engineer their emotions deliberately, trust erodes quickly. Authenticity, on the other hand, strengthens emotional association. When your observations are genuine and your attention is real, people naturally relax around you. They feel comfortable expressing more of themselves. And the more someone expresses their authentic thoughts and emotions in your presence, the stronger the psychological bond becomes. This is why emotional intelligence is such a powerful skill in relationships. Emotional intelligence isn't about saying the perfect thing at the perfect moment. It's about noticing, understanding, and responding to the emotional landscape of a conversation. A man who listens carefully, observes thoughtfully, and responds with sincerity creates an environment where connection grows naturally. He doesn't have to force attraction because the interaction itself becomes enjoyable and meaningful. And here's something else worth remembering. Women often talk to many people throughout their day. Coworkers, friends, acquaintances, strangers. Most conversations blend together. They are pleasant but forgettable. But every once in a while, a conversation feels different. Maybe someone asked a thoughtful question no one had asked before. Maybe someone noticed something subtle about their personality. Maybe someone simply listened without interrupting or trying to dominate the discussion. Those are the conversations that stay in memory, not because they were dramatic or intense, but because they felt real. So when you combine genuine attention with emotionally meaningful compliments like the ones we've discussed, something subtle begins to happen. The woman you're speaking with starts experiencing you as someone who interacts differently than most men she encounters, and different can be very attractive. Not louder, not flashier, just more present. Presence is rare today. People often rush through interactions while thinking about the next task, the next notification, the next distraction. But when someone slows down and truly engages with another person, the experience feels refreshing. And refreshing experiences are memorable. This is why the most impactful communicators are often the calmest ones. They don't try to dominate the conversation. They don't compete for attention. They simply create space for meaningful interaction. When a woman senses that kind of grounded presence, her nervous system relaxes. Conversations flow more easily. She feels comfortable sharing more personal thoughts, and gradually, the connection deepens without either person feeling pressured. Now, let's revisit the 3 compliments we discussed earlier and understand them from a broader psychological perspective. The first one, recognizing the way her mind works, validates her intellect and perspective. It tells her that you appreciate how she interprets the world. This kind of recognition appeals to a person's sense of identity because our thinking patterns are deeply connected to who we believe we are. The second one, acknowledging that her energy stays with you, validates her emotional presence. It suggests that her personality has a lasting impact on the people she meets. This addresses a very human desire to be memorable and meaningful to others. And the second one, acknowledging that her energy stays with you, validates her emotional presence. It suggests that her personality has a lasting impact on the people she meets. This addresses a very human desire to be memorable and meaningful to others. And the third one, expressing that you feel calm when speaking with her, validates the emotional environment she creates. It tells her that her presence contributes to a sense of peace and comfort. Together, these observations communicate something powerful. They say, I notice you not just as a person in front of me, but as a whole emotional being. And when someone feels recognized in that way, the interaction becomes deeply satisfying. But remember, the words themselves are only part of the equation. The real magic happens in the way those words are delivered. Tone, eye contact, and timing all influence how a message is received. A compliment spoken slowly and thoughtfully carries more emotional weight than one delivered quickly or distractedly. When you speak calmly and maintain gentle eye contact, your sincerity becomes easier to feel. And sincerity is the foundation of trust. Trust doesn't appear instantly. It builds gradually through small moments where people feel respected, understood, and emotionally safe. When those moments accumulate, the relationship naturally deepens. Now here's a question worth reflecting on. Think about the people you feel closest to in your own life. Friends, partners, family members. What made those relationships meaningful? Chances are, it wasn't just shared activities or surface-level compliments. It was the moments where you felt understood. The moments where someone truly listened. The moments where you felt comfortable being your authentic self without judgment. Those experiences create emotional bonds that last. And the beautiful thing is that anyone can learn to create those experiences simply by becoming more attentive and emotionally aware in their conversations. This doesn't require extraordinary charisma or dramatic personality. In fact, some of the most emotionally impactful people are quiet observers who simply notice things others overlook. They notice the details. They notice the shifts in tone. They notice the small expressions that reveal how someone is truly feeling. And when they respond thoughtfully to those observations, people feel seen. So instead of trying to become more impressive, focus on becoming more aware. Notice the subtle layers of the people you interact with. Listen to their stories with curiosity rather than waiting for your turn to speak. When you do that, meaningful compliments appear naturally because you are responding to real observations rather than rehearsed ideas. And those kinds of compliments carry weight. They linger in the mind. They create emotional warmth. They make people look forward to speaking with you again. Now, before we finish today's conversation, I want to leave you with one final thought. Attraction isn't something that can be forced or manufactured through clever lines. True attraction grows from emotional resonance, the feeling that two people are connecting on a level deeper than routine conversation. The 3 compliments we discussed today simply open the door to that deeper connection. They show a woman that you notice more than the obvious, that you value the parts of her personality that often go unrecognized. When you communicate with that level of awareness, conversations change. They become richer, more engaging, more memorable, and the people you speak with begin to experience you differently, not as someone trying to impress them, but as someone who truly sees them. If this conversation helped you see communication in a new way, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps these kinds of thoughtful discussions reach more people who are interested in building meaningful relationships. And I'd also love to hear your thoughts. Which part of this discussion stood out to you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for spending this time here with me. Understanding human psychology and emotional connection is a lifelong journey, and every conversation like this brings us one step closer to communicating with more awareness, empathy, and authenticity. And when we learn to speak to each other with that level of understanding, the connections we create can become far more meaningful than we ever expected.